Hello, everyone. One of the topics that gives students trouble early on in the semester is whenever we start finding the mean and the standard deviation or variance of group data, and that is section 4.5. So you may have to work a little harder on that section. I'm going to show you something that I do or that you can do in Excel to speed it up just a little bit. It doesn't speed it up that much, but it kind of helps me to write all of these things down in columns so that I'll have all the information that I need. So here's a problem from the homework. This is in the practice, of course, and it says find the population mean. So with population mean for group data, you need to first find the midpoint for each one of your classes. So I'm going to do that with the calculator just built into Windows. You can use your own calculator. You can see I'm going to bring mine over. I've been doing some work over to the side. But you need to find the midpoint for each class. So to do that, you just add the lower limit and the upper limit, and then divide by 2. Alright, and so 7.45, I'm going to put that in my first midpoint column here. And I'm going to do that for each one of my classes, and you'll see that there's a pattern you'll see that'll appear because of the way these things are spaced out. So after a while you may not even have to put it in the calculator. So 8 plus 8.9 divided by 2, and I got 8.45. So I think you can already see the pattern that's forming. 8.45. We'll do one more just to make sure we got that pattern correctly. And we got 9 to 9.99. So 9 plus 9.9 divided by 2. And it's 9.45. So yes, we can see there's a pattern. And we don't want to go too far. We got to make sure we do the 9, the 10, the 11, 12, and 13. Alright, so that's what I'm going to do. 9.45, 10.45, 11.45, 12.45, and then 13.45. And you could have as easily just written those down on a piece of paper. There are a couple of things though I like about Excel, like being able to add up a column or something like that where I don't have to retype it in a calculator. And it's real easy just to mess up one number, especially when working with this group data. And Excel is something that, remember, you can download from Colin. You can download the entire Microsoft suite to your laptop or desktop for free, as long as you're a student at Colin. So to do that, you have to log in through Office and put in your Colin email address and your password, and then it'll let you download the software for free. If you need help doing that, though, you can send me an email and I'll make another video on how to do that. Alright, so we have all of our class midpoints. Now we need to write down all of our frequencies. Alright, it's very important that we write these down correctly, because if we put in the wrong number here, it's going to mess us up in the future. So, let's see, 19, 19, 33. 47, 46, 29. 16. And it doesn't hurt to always double check, you know. I could have made the window smaller, but it's going to disappear when I click over here on Excel. And I can split it up. I could put half of one window here and half the other window on the other side. Whatever is best for you. About 16. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to do just a little bit of programming in Excel. And once you get the feel of it, it's not very hard. Okay, notice we have the same number of midpoints as we do frequencies. These should match up going side by side. Alright, if I want to say the midpoint times the frequency, you put equals, and now I need to put the position that this number is in. It's in A2. So A2, and then you push shift and 8, and that gives you the little star. That means times. And then B2 is where our frequency is. Alright, so that's the midpoint times the frequency. Now you may be thinking, well, now I have to go through and do that for all the other columns, all the other rows. But there's actually a shortcut. In the bottom right hand corner, you see this little bitty square here? That square, if you double click on it, it'll copy that formula all the way down. It'll do A3 times B3, A4 times B4. And so that way you don't have to do the formula every time. You just make sure you get it right the first time, and then double click on the little square in the bottom, and it'll copy it down. As long as you have numbers here, it's going to copy it down that far. Now, the midpoint squared, the way you do a squared number, we'll do equals, so the midpoint's in A2. So we say A2, and the way that you square, you use shift 6, that's the little up caret, and then if I want to square a number, that's how you put to the second power. And so that is 7.45 raised to the second power. Now, if you double click here in this little corner, watch what happens. It does it for all of those midpoints. So that's the midpoint squared. You may be wondering why I'm going ahead and filling all these out. I don't actually need all of this information to find the mean, but I am going to need it whenever I find the population variance and population standard deviation. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out everything. I could have actually found my mean. I could have found that before I made this last column. But let's go ahead and do the very last column that we need, and that is the midpoint squared times the frequency. Remember, this is already the midpoint squared, so we don't put the square in anymore. So this is D2, so equals D2 times, and then remember the frequency was back over here at B2. So B2. Alright. And so it did that for us, and now I'm going to double click that little square there in the corner, and it did that for us. Now, of course, we could do all this out by hand, but if you have a real big set of data, a lot of times it's real easy just to, what I call, fat finger a number. I have really big hands, and so like when I'm working with calculators, sometimes I'll push a number and it'll put in two numbers by mistake and I don't realize it. Or you could just type in the wrong number by mistake. But the thing with Excel is we can, as long as we get out everything in initially correct that we need to do, then all of these calculations are going to be correct. Alright, so let's go back to our actual problem. It wants us to find the population mean. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to find the population mean. To find the population mean, we need to take the midpoint times the frequency, the sum of all of those, and then divide that by the sum of the frequencies. So what you can do to find a sum, I'm going to click here in the cell right below all of these numbers, and I'm going to go over here and click the sum button. It's right up here, auto sum. So sum. Alright, now this is going to give us the sum of C2 to C8, and we can make sure C2 to C8 in case we needed to change something. Alright, but there's the sum. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the frequencies. because the way that you find the mean of group data is you find the sum of the midpoint times the frequencies, and then you divide that by the total number of frequencies, which is, in our textbook we're using it as capital N. Alright, so I'm going to find that sum. Notice it does have the correct cells here and highlighted. Alright, so now to find the actual mean, I'm going to take my calculator, or you could just make another cell down here and divide, but I'm going to take my calculator, 2208.05 divided by 209. Alright, and the mean is usually, it tells us around the 2 places here. So that would be 10.56. That's going to be our answer. And if you go into the tutor option in the practice, I haven't went through here yet, but you can see they're doing some of the same things we did. We just went a little further. And the correct answer is 10.56. Okay. Alright, now we're going to go to the next step that asks for the population variance. So it's very, very important that we understand the difference between the variance and the standard deviation and a population or a sample, because we have to use different formulas for all of those. So for the population variance, we are, I guess you could say, what is the relationship? If you take the square root of the variance, you get the standard deviation. If you already have the standard deviation, which most times you don't, and you wanted the variance, then you would square the number. But if you, like this one, this problem's asked me to find the population variance, I'm not going to take the square root at the end. Basically, it's the same formula without the square root. Now, what's the difference in the population and the sample? Usually, instead of the places where you would divide by capital N, that would be the total number of the frequency, you'll divide by n minus 1. Okay, but make sure that you refer back to your textbook and the formulas, because some problems in the homework are going to ask for population variance, some are going to ask for population standard deviation, some are going to ask for sample variance, and some are going to ask for sample standard deviation. So make sure you refer back to the formulas in the book to know which formula to use. And all this can be done in Excel. There's just not any big shortcuts. For some stuff you do in statistics, there's really big shortcuts in Excel. I would say this one would probably, if I was working a problem out by hand like this, it might take me about 20 minutes if I was using my calculator, because I would have to go back and double check every number. If I'm doing this in Excel, it's going to take me probably about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how fast I am at adding things up and putting in the formulas in the different columns. Okay, so we have found our mean. Now we're going to find our population variance. We do have to know the formula to use for our population variance. It looks a little, I guess you could say, a little complex when you first look at it. I'm going to copy it over here so you can see it. But it's not really that bad. Alright, and this is population variance. Notice you got the lowercase sigma here squared. Okay, so the thing I want to first point out, the thing here in the parentheses, that's the mean. That's what we just found. So we can plug that in there already. The only thing that we have to figure out is the sum of the frequency times the midpoint squared divided by capital N. Because we've already figured the second part out. Well, remember when we were filling out our table here, I did the midpoint squared times the frequency. That's the same thing as the frequency times the midpoint squared. So I just need to find the sum of that column. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to find the sum of this column. And that's E2 through E8. E2 through E8. Alright, so we're going to take this number and divide it by 209. So when I take 23,910.9225, I'm going to divide that by 209, and that number goes right here in my formula. I don't know if I can write on this. Let's see. Alright, so it does go right here in your formula, here where you can see my cursor kind of blocking it out. So I'll put the 20, whatever I get in the calculator, I'll put that there, and then I subtract, and I'm going to put my mean in. Now when I put my mean in, I'm going to put it out to about 4 decimal places, because it's good to not plug in rounded answers. Even though 4 decimal places is still rounded, you can see I'm not going to plug in 10.56. I'm going to plug in 10.5648 because we want to carry this thing out a couple of decimal places to make sure that if we're rounding the next thing to 2 decimal places, every time you round, you create a margin of error. So if you start plugging in rounded values, even though 4 decimal places is still rounded, if you start plugging in small, like lower decimals, like say tenths or hundredths, you're going to create a bigger margin of error. So you need to make sure that you carry it out to about 4 or 5 places when you plug the things in, plug your numbers in. All right. And luckily, if you expand the scientific calculator in Windows, it does save your values over here, so you won't have to go back and redo them. But I do need to do the 23. Let's see, 23,910.9225, and then divide that by the frequency, which was 209. Alright, so here's what I got, and I'm going to write that down in one of these cells just so I can save it. Alright, and that number is actually going to go first here. And I'm going to carry it out to 4 places, just like I'm going to carry out my other number I'm going to plug into 4 places. So 114.4063. I'm just going to put it over here somewhere. Alright, so I think I messed something up over here whenever I did that. It doesn't really matter. I could do the sum again. There, see, it came back up. Alright, 114, that is the number that goes first in my formula. Alright, right here where you can see my mouse is kind of covering part of the formula. Now we have to say minus the mean squared. See this little 2 out here? We have to take the mean and square it. So I'm going to take the mean, which was 10, and I'm going to take it out to a couple of places. 10.5648, and then I'm going to square it. So if you don't have the square button up there, you can usually hit second, but it should be there if your calculator's in scientific mode or whatever calculator you're using. So I'm going to square that, okay, and I'm going to write this down to 4 decimal places in Excel. See, so 111.6149. Alright, so my formula, if you remember, was to take the first number here, the one that was the frequency times the midpoint squared divided by n, and subtract the mean squared. And that's going to give me the population variance. If I wanted the population standard deviation, I would have to take the square root of my number at the end. But I don't, I just want the population variance. So I'm going to say 114.4063 minus 111.6149. Alright, so this is my population variance. And more than likely, it's probably going to tell me to round it to 2 places. So it depends on what the problem says. Most of the time 2 places is pretty accurate, pretty common. So my population variance would be 2.79. Okay, if I wanted the population standard deviation, I would take the square root of that. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or comment on the video, and I will try to get back with you as soon as possible. Thanks. Have a great day.